Hello everyone, welcome back to Technologies Discussion channel. For this video, I'd like to continue the discussion on artificial intelligence AI. On my previous discussion, I have described the component of artificial intelligence. Mainly, I have discussed what is actually learning and also reasoning. Okay, so under this component of AI, in fact, beside learning and reasoning, we also have problem solving, perception, and also language understanding. This video, I like to highlight the key difference between reasoning and also problem solving, because a lot of us actually think that this is actually the same. However, this video, I will explain the key difference between reasoning and also problem solving. Basically, this will be the objective of this video. Guys, if you're keen to know more about artificial intelligence, please see the playlist under the description. Over there, you will be able to see a very comprehensive discussion on AI soon. This is my email. If you have any question regards on this discussion, please drop me an email. Okay, or if not, I actually prefer you guys to ask me your question through the comment. Before I continue, I'd like to urge you guys to help me. Just give me a few seconds. Help me press the like button now. For those who are new to this channel, please consider to subscribe and turn on your notification bell. Once again, thank you so much for some support. Let's quickly take a close look. Okay, what is actually AI? I have defined this early on, but let me quickly explain what is the definition of AI. So AI is the field of computer science. They are actually dedicated to create a system that is capable to do certain tasks that require human intelligence. Okay, so basically AI is to replace the human intelligence to execute a task. So under this AI, these are the following tasks that may be executed. Okay, for example, there will be learning, reasoning, problem solving, perception, and also last but not least, language understanding. So AI, you can imagine this as a project of building machine that they can think and also they can add intelligence. Okay, so basically this is a quick definition of AI. I have explained comprehensively on my previous discussion on reasoning. Okay, but this video, as I mentioned earlier on, I'm going to do a quick comparison between reasoning and also problem solving. So therefore, I need to quickly discuss what is actually reasoning. Okay, so reasoning is the ability of AI system to apply logic, rules, and also knowledge to draw conclusion and make informal decision. Okay, so this process involves using logical and deductive techniques to process information, and finally they will arrive at a sound outcome. Let me give you an example. Okay, so this is actually the user input. Okay, so basically the user input say that I want to go to a warm beach this weekend. I have a budget of $500. Okay, so again, you can see that under the reasoning, we need to have logic, we need to have the rules, and also we need to have the knowledge. What will be the logic? Okay, for example, the logic, the warm beach. Okay, for this case here, if we say that warm beach, we can assume that the beach need to be around at least 30 degrees, 30 degrees, right? So basically, with 30 degrees, you can consider this as a warm beach. So basically, this is one of the logic. Another logic on weekend. Okay, so what does weekend means? Weekend means Saturday and Sunday. Okay, so again, you actually apply logic, okay, onto this user input in order to so-called under the reasoning. Next on the rules, okay, what will be the rules? The rules is the user mentioned that he has only a budget of $500. So this is actually the rules. Next, okay, we also need to have the knowledge. Okay, what is the actually the knowledge? For example, I need to have the knowledge where will be a warm beach, where will be the beach that will be warm, for example. I also need to have the knowledge of the cost when I actually stay in the beach, for example, here on the weekend. So basically over here, you can see that what is actually the logic, okay, which is the warm beach, okay, which is 30 degrees Celsius, the weekend, which is Saturday and Sunday. Rules is I need to have a budget of $500. Basically, this will be the rule. Anything more than budget of $500, it will be no go. Next, on the knowledge, okay, I must be able to know which beach actually has 30 degrees, for example. And I also need to know the cost when you actually stay on the beach, let's say the nearby hotel. So basically, this is a simple conclusion that we actually solve this by using the reasoning of AI. I won't go through this again. Okay, if you can see the playlist. Okay, so I have actually explained all this. Okay, so basically this is again, I will just quickly mention about the reasoning. Basically, this is what you mean by deductive reasoning. Okay, basically it's like a mathematic process here. So basically, for example, for this equation here, if A is greater than B and if B is greater than C, we can draw this conclusion based on logic. A will be greater than C. Okay, so basically this is the logic. Another way for reasoning is also under this inductive reasoning. For example, it mentioned that all the swarm will be white. Okay, so therefore we assume that all the swarm are white. Okay, so but this may not be true. Okay, which means that it will be certain probability that this will be wrong. But we just draw a inductive conclusion that if all the swarm that I see they are all white, so I assume that all the swarm they are actually all white. Another one will be the additive reasoning, okay, which means that the most likely, okay, for example, when you see that the glass, okay, they are all wet, we assume that just now it actually rained. Okay, so basically this is for the reasoning. Okay, so I guess you probably have some so-called understanding what is reasoning. Okay, but like I mentioned, the key objective of this video is to compare reasoning against problem solving. Let's come to the problem solving. Okay, so basically what is actually problem solving is in fact to find a solution to a goal. Okay, so the key difference, okay, just need to digest this. The key difference between reasoning is all the thinking. You can see that all these are all the thinking. Okay, but for problem solving is all the doing, okay, which means that how you actually execute the job. Okay, so from here, okay, let's quickly understand on problem solving. Okay, so problem solving, okay, again, is also a critical component of AI. From here, you can see that they actually focus on the ability of machine to analyze problem. Okay, so basically, it's a deeper problem. Okay, they will be able to analyze certain problem. They actually devise the strategize. Okay, basically, they can have many move. So they will decide which move will be the better one, and finally, they will be able to find the best solution. Okay, so basically this is the AI, okay, component, okay, which is the problem solving. AI system actually employ various algorithms and techniques to tackle problem. Okay, often they actually use heuristic and optimization method. Okay, so basically I will explain this with an example later on. So for instance, search algorithm can explore possible path. Okay, for example, you Google something, okay, it show a whole list of things that you actually so-called you Google. So basically, these are what we mean that it's actually all those possible path or all the possible solution. And under this problem solving, they will be helping us to find the best one. Okay, so therefore the best one will be on top. The second or the third or not so correct, they will be following after that. So basically from here you can see that they actually search all the possible answer and then basically from there they find the best possible one and they put the best possible one on top. Okay, so basically this is under the AI of problem solving. Planning algorithm can create sequence of action to achieve desired goal. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, let me give you a simple example. For example, I want to fly from Singapore to Hawaii. Okay, but there's no, let's say that there's no so-called air from aircraft flying from Singapore to Hawaii, let's say. Okay, but okay, for problem solving, okay, I will be able to create a sequence of action. Okay, so let's say that I will be traveling to another location and do a transit before I actually can reach Hawaii. So therefore, with this, I actually can be travel from Singapore, okay, let's say to Japan, and then from Japan to Hawaii. So basically, this is what AI under problem solving means, which means that they create a sequence of action. As you can see that I can't go from Singapore all the way direct to Hawaii. However, okay, I can go from Singapore to Japan and from Japan to Hawaii. Then I will be able to so-called reach my destination. So basically, this is what it means, with certain planning algorithm, they actually create a sequence of action, and hence this make us able to achieve the desired goal. Optimization algorithm can optimize solution based on specific criteria. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, for example, even if you take a transit, you can also find all the possible transit and which one okay will have the shortest time for you to reach Hawaii, for example, for this case here. Or maybe another type of optimization is you do not like to stay in a transition area that long. So basically, from this optimization, you can find the minimum time that you actually need to have transition, and then you will be able to reach Hawaii also. So all these are all the optimization algorithm that can actually help to optimize the solution based on specific criteria. Okay, whether you want to have the shortest time, whether you want to have the shortest time on the transition or the shorter times to reach your destination, etc. Okay, so there are many different types of problem solving techniques. Over here, you can see that we have search and optimization, we have the constraint satisfaction, and also the game theory, which I'm going to explain on the next slides. Okay, so problem solving. Let me give you further understanding on problem solving. They basically involve finding a path, right? So basically, you have one path. They will find a path from a given initial stage to a desired goal stage. And then they may have finding many other alternative paths also. Okay, so this is actually problem solving. They start off by finding a path from one way, go all the way from the initial state to the desired goal. After that, they actually have many alternative paths. And then basically, they define the problem, they plan a sequence of action, and then they overcome the obstacle. So basically, after that, they actually will provide you the best so-called path for you to reach the destination. Okay, it can be the shortest time, it can be the cheapest way, it can be green, okay, which means that you save the most in terms of petrol, etc. So basically, all these are all the AI under problem solving. Let's come to understand the different problem solving techniques. The first one is actually the search and optimization. Okay, so you actually search through a set of possible solutions to find the best one. One of the simple example is actually the Google Map. Okay, so if you Google from point A to point B, Google Map will find the fastest route. So basically, they don't offer you just one route. They offer many possible route, and based on that, they actually find the fastest route. Let's say this is your criteria. They will find the fastest route, or for example, you can avoid the toll. Okay, so basically, Google Map actually allow you to select the path that you actually can avoid all the toll. So basically, this is under the search and optimization. They search all possible solution, and then basically based on certain criteria, they optimize to you, and then basically they so-called they propose this solution to you. Another one will be the constraint satisfaction. Okay, so basically they solve the problem where the problem must meet a set of constraint of rules. Okay, for example, okay, we want to schedule the class. So basically when we actually schedule the class, we cannot afford to have a teacher in two locations at one time. Okay, so basically this is under a certain constraint. Okay, so this is another techniques of problem solving. Next will be on the game theory. Okay, so basically is to make strategized decision in competitive situation. Let me explain with another example here. Okay, for example, okay, basically a chess engine like Alpha Zero is a master of problem solving. Okay, so basically it is a master of problem solving. They are actually playing chess. You just can imagine this. So why? Okay, because they evaluate millions of possible moves to find the one that maximize its chance of winning. Okay, so let me explain this with these problem solving techniques. Okay, basically they will find out all the possible moves. Okay, so all the possible move, they will find out all the possible move, and then they probably will do some optimization is to win the match, for example here. So they will do all the optimization. However, there will be certain constraint also. Because all the chess they need to move in a proper way. Okay, you understand what I mean? So basically they are not allowed to, let's say they cannot jump from one location to another location. Okay, they need to move the movement according to the rules and regulation. So we have this constraint that we need to specify. Another one will be on the game theory. So basically, we need to make certain strategized decision. Okay, for example, let's say when we actually eat a piece of the other opponents one, and then which result in us for losing another two piece. then this will not benefit us at all. So therefore, in this case here, this will be the problem solving under the game theory. Okay, they will make strategized decision in a competitive situation. Okay, so basically this is for problem solving. Okay, so guys, before I continue, if you have learned something from this video, please consider, okay, to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Once again, thank you so much for strong support. Next, let me give you an example, okay, under the reasoning and also the example under the problem solving. Okay, so basically they will be the same situation. Okay, for example, okay, now I want to plan a trip. Okay, so basically, let's imagine that AI actually helped me to plan this weekend trip. Okay, so this is what I have written earlier on. Okay, so first, the AI need to reason about the information you give it and also its own knowledge. Okay, so basically, this is the input that I mentioned earlier on. Okay, so basically the user input, I want to go to a warm beach this weekend. I have a budget of $500. Okay, so basically this is what I mentioned earlier on. Okay, so basically this is what under the reasoning will be. Okay, so basically under the AI knowledge base. Okay, so the facts. Okay, so basically this is all the logic, the facts. Like for example, Miami is a beach city and Miami is actually in Florida. Okay, so basically Florida is warm in summer, so therefore we conclude that Miami will be warm, and therefore we will be able to have a warm beach. This is what it means. Okay, so basically this is under the AI knowledge base here. So next we need to know the flight to Miami. For example, where is your location now? Let's say you are at New York. Okay, you take the flight from New York to Miami, and it's cost you about $300. And you also need to so-called have the constraint on the stay because you are going to stay there on Saturday and Sunday. Okay, so basically the hotel in Miami is actually costing you $200 per night. So therefore, a weekend is actually 2 nights. So basically, you need to do all this calculation here. So this is actually under the reasoning. Okay, which means that if this thing fail, they will not offer you another solution. Okay, so basically, this is under the reasoning. Okay, so let's take a close look. So now the AI began to reason. Okay, for example, under the deductive reasoning. So if Florida is actually warm, then therefore Miami will be inside the Florida, and therefore I conclude that Miami also will be warm. Okay, so basically this is to use logic. As I mentioned earlier on, basically A greater than B, B greater than C, so therefore I can easily conclude that A will be greater than C. Okay, so this is the same example here. So if let's say Florida is warm, okay, since Miami is actually inside the Florida, so therefore I conclude that Miami will be warm and therefore I will have a warm beach here. Okay, so basically this is what it means under the logic inference. Okay, the user want a warm beach. Okay, so therefore Miami is actually a warm beach. So therefore Miami is actually a potential destination. Okay, so basically this is basically under the reasoning and then some inference. Next will be on the constraint check. If you still remember, I have a budget of $500. So therefore, you need to have some knowledge. For example, okay, in order to travel from New York to Miami, for example, it costs you $300. Okay, so and then we also need to have the knowledge, the cost of staying in the hotel. Okay, so the hotel for 2 night stay, let's say, is $400. Okay, so therefore from here you can see that 300 at 400. Okay, which means that it's $700, and $700 is more than my budget. Okay, so therefore the conclusion is the trip to Miami actually exceed the budget. So definitely it will be no go. But under the reasoning, it actually stop over here. It actually do all the logic, do all the thinking, and then they actually arrived that this Miami actually exceed the budget. So therefore, we could not go to the warm beach based on this criteria here. Okay, so basically this is what it means here. This entire process is reasoning. The AI isn't solving the problem yet. Okay, you can see that the problem has not been solved because it actually more than the budget. So therefore, it's just figuring out what is true and what isn't based on the logic and constraint. Okay, so basically this is what the limit on reasoning. Okay, so if you draw a conclusion, okay, for example, I want to go to use this example to go to Miami as a warm beach, but I actually unfortunately burst the budget. So therefore, I will not be able to meet the trip. Okay, but this thing all stop under the reasoning. Okay, so now let's take a look. If let's say we shift from the reasoning to problem solving, okay, which means that whatever that we done on the so-called reasoning, we actually shift it to the problem solving. Okay, so now that the AI has reasoned that the initial idea feels, it need to solve the problem. Okay, so now is to execute the job now, to do the job now. Find a warm beach destination for a weekend that costs less than $500. Okay, so therefore the AI switch into the problem solving mode. Okay, so basically it have some define again. Okay, so basically they will define where is your initial state, where are you? Okay, you will be at home, New York, for example, here, and you have $500 and you want a beach trip. Okay, so basically this is a key thing. You are at the initial state and you need to go towards the goal stage. So under the initial state, where will be your location? How much will be your budget? And what you actually want to do is you want to have a warm beach trip. Warm beach trip. Okay, so basically the goal, okay, basically this is I want to go to a warm beach and I need to ensure that my total cost will be less than $500. So they will search for all the possible action. Okay, so earlier on, I did mention that I need to take aircraft. So basically, they actually will be searching for alternative destination also. They will be also searching for cheaper flight on different days. Okay, so beside weekend, they will be selecting all possible different days also. And they were also searching for cheaper accommodation, suggest a driving destination to save on flight costs. Basically, you can see that the flight costs become a major part, and therefore, okay, instead of taking flight, basically they suggest to drive. Then you will actually be able to meet the budget of $500. Basically, all this can be done by problem solving, okay, of the AI. Okay, so basically, I will explain this further. But over here, you can see that the key thing of this problem solving is where will be your initial state, what will be your key objective, and then basically how to move from your initial stage to your final objective. This is on the problem solving. As compared earlier on to the reasoning, okay, basically you can see that they base on the information and then they meet some logic, okay, and then they also meet some form of logic, okay, as I explained earlier on, they meet some form of logic, okay, they meet some form of rules, and also they meet some form of knowledge in order to draw a conclusion. However, for problem solving, they actually will give you all the possible solution until they find a solution, which I'm going to go through in deep detail now. Okay, so basically next, the AI will now search through this solution. Okay, so for example, okay, they search for a beach that is within driving distance. Okay, for example, now they actually propose to at another location, okay, which is the outer band. Okay, for example, it just costs $100 for us to drive. Okay, and then the hotel stay is actually 250 for the 2 days, and the total cost is 350. And hence, you actually check your budget, and basically we will say that the objective actually meet. Okay, so this is your initial state, this is your final stage, and when you actually move from your initial stage to your final stage, your goal is actually achieved. So we actually solve the problem by using the problem solving. Okay, so the process of generating option, evaluate them against the goal and select a successful path is actually problem solving. It uses the conclusion from its reasoning. Okay, for example, Miami is too expensive to guide its search towards a viable solution. So basically, in short, over here, you can see that reasoning and problem solving, they are not the same. Okay, reasoning actually give you the possible solution. However, you may not have the desired solution. Problem solving will show all possible things, and then finally, they will actually search towards a viable solution. Okay, so basically, this is the key difference between reasoning and problem solving. Let me do a quick summarize for this example. Okay, so basically under the reasoning and also under the problem solving. Okay, so under the reasoning, okay, we conclude that Miami is actually a warm beach, right? The total cost for Miami would be $700, and hence the $700 is more than the 500 budget. So therefore, Miami is actually not a valid option. Okay, with this, okay, the AI actually moved from reasoning to problem solving. Okay, so since Miami is invalid, I will search my database for closer, cheaper beach destination. Okay, I found that the Outer Bank, okay, the cost is 350, which is under the budget. So therefore, my problem solved. basically this is the key difference between reasoning and also problem solving. So in a nutshell, okay, the AI reasoned that Miami was too expensive. It solved the problem by finding another alternative that meet all the logical constraints. Okay, so hopefully you have a better idea the key difference between reasoning and problem solving. Let's come to my last slide. Okay, I like to draw a quick conclusion. Okay, compare the difference between reasoning and also problem solving. Let's come to the primary focus. What will be the primary focus? The why and how of logic. Okay, so basically this is actually for reasoning. Basically, we draw a inference, validate conclusion, and navigate knowledge. Okay, so basically this is for reasoning. As for problem solving, okay, basically we will be concentrate on what to achieve a goal. Basically, this is to find a path from a current stage to a desired goal. Okay, so we need to know what will be our current state, what are all the possible so-called path, and then from there we will be able to select the one that meet our goal, so-called the most ideal. Okay, so basically this is a quick difference between reasoning and also problem solving. Next, in terms of the process, okay, so under the reasoning is, as I mentioned earlier on, okay, we actually apply all the logic, all the rules, all the knowledge, etc., so as to generate new information or belief. Okay, so basically this is under the reasoning. As for problem solving, they actually formulate a problem. Okay, they search all the possible action and select a sequence to reach the goal. So basically, the key difference is they know where you are and then how you actually move your final objective, and it may be many possible paths, and then basically they will select the best possible path for you to move on. In terms of the analogies, okay, basically this reasoning is like a construct a valid argument or a lawyer building a case from evidence. So basically, you find all the possible evidence and you actually work towards a case, okay, to fight against the so-called the logic way, etc. Okay, as for problem solving, it's basically a GPS calculating the best route. Okay, so for example, you know that when you actually do the Google Map, okay, based on the GPS, where your location, where you want to go, they will calculate the best route from your current location to a destination. Last but not least, under the key question, okay, basically is based on what I know. Okay, so the limited information given by the user, okay, based on what the AI actually know, what also should be true, or is this conclusion consistent with the rules? As for problem solving is what is the series of steps that will get me from here to there. Okay, so basically the key thing I want to emphasize is for problem solving is from original location, how to move to the final location. As for reasoning, is basically construct a very logical based on the rules and also based on the knowledge, how to draw a conclusion. With this, I'd like to end my discussion. Please help to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Once again, thank you so much for strong support. I hope to see you guys soon. Bye for now. Thank you so much.